What was your this person is on another level of stupid moment. Dude burned down his convenience store for an insurance claim. And stopped the milk and bread deliveries the day before. Demolished my right foot. And a bunch of other shit. In a motorcycle crash and had to have the top of my foot removed. Guy I worked with asked me when it would grow back. I explained that the skin and stuff was going to have to be grafted. But the tendons and bones that had been removed were gone forever. He looked me dead in the eye and asked why don't they just cut the whole ducking thing off and let it grow back? Going through security and the person says I need to show a different form of it. I asked why because I gave them my driver's license. They say I need a US document like a green card or something. I'm a US citizen. Then I realized. I explained how District of Columbia is long for DC. Like Washington DC. As in the capital of our country. I got a bad grade in geography in high school. My teacher kept trying to push me and suggested I talk to my parents about it. I told my mum I was failing geography and she said how ducking stupid can you really be, Justin? How do you fail geography? It's just shapes. I'll never forget that one. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes. I've started sharing some of my true stories like this one and the Reddit community has been very nice to me. I really appreciate it. Coworker bought a low flow shower head. He filled the bathtub using the new low flow shower head because it would use less water. While driving from one big city to another, I stopped in a small town to eat at a fast food chain in Texas. I order my food, get my orange number tent and sit down to wait for my order. The lady who's bringing out orders has this I give up demeanor as she's calling out numbers that guests aren't claiming. Each time this happens, she speaks to a couple tables to seemingly figure out who food is for. Then I hear her call for number 55 while holding a tray of food for one person. I was number 54 and noticed I was the only single party guest there. We make eye contact and she heads towards me. She confirms my order with me and says sorry. For some reason the computer prints one number higher. I immediately ask, well then why don't you just call out one number lower than what's printed? She freezes and I can see the gears turning in her head. I tell her thank you and she goes on her way. I'm an identical twin, and have been asked all manner of utterly ridiculous questions about it throughout my life. But I think the stupidest was when a girl once asked me, do you ever get yourselves mixed up with each other? I responded, are you asking me if I ever sometimes think I'm my brother? She replied, yeah. Number. I don't. When I was in middle school I was in art class with a boy named Devon. I told him my sister has the same name as him and he asked me what her name was. The time I watched someone who had missed their exit on the highway stop on the shoulder, back up, turn around, and go up the entrance ramp. I could not ducking believe it. Edit. A couple of fun details about this incident to really highlight its stupidity. The next exit was a few miles up the road. Going to that exit and then turning around might have delayed their drive by 15 minutes tops. There was no traffic ahead. I watched this person do this as I was coming down that same entrance ramp to get onto the highway. I work for Parks Canada in Yoho National Park. I have been asked the question, seriously, where do you keep the animals at night? Twice in my career. To this day I still find great joy imagining what they thought was going on each night as we collected every large animal in the parks. I was a co-hostess with a girl in a restaurant, watching ads on a hanging TV for a new movie. At the end, it said coming soon to a theater near you, to which she turned to me with wide eyes and genuinely asked how do they know where I live. Edit. There are so many more stories about this chick, but this one summed it up the best. She also had to stop walking to drink anything or she'd fall over. And didn't understand that not all women have to wax their mustaches because not all women have them. She was 20. This was my first experience in retail where I learned what many customers would be like. Seasons were changing, so we put a lot of shirts we had to get rid of in the front and made them 50% off. I was working the register when a woman came up to buy her things. I rang her up and could see a look on her face like something was wrong. That's when the following happened. Lady, why is this so much? Me. Pardon me, lady. This should only be $10, not $20. I thought that maybe her item was on sale. So I asked if she could point out the sign because I wasn't aware of it. It was a small store and we didn't have to walk anywhere. Lady, this sign here. Me. This sign says that all shirts are 50% off. Lady, yes. So why is this full price? Me. This is a hat. Back when the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster happened, we were discussing how the reactor had failed in a science class. 5 minutes into the conversation, a girl piped up and said, "I don't see what the big deal is. Why can't we just regrow it?" She deadass thought a nuclear power plant was. We asked our classmate to prove she knew the 7 continents. Her list went like this: North America, Europe, China, the Pacific Ocean. You not. Damn. To think she missed Mount Everest, the Pacific Ocean, and the Polar Express. It's like they aren't even teaching geography in schools anymore. Sad really. Summer camp counselor made all the kids on a school bus keep the windows up on a hot day because they could feel the air conditioning coming from the front of the bus. It was so hot and I, maybe 10 years old at the time, had to explain to the 40-year-old counselor that the air conditioning they were feeling was the wind coming in through the bus driver's open window. She still didn't believe me. I begged her to ask the bus driver to confirm the bus did not have air conditioning, but she didn't want to bother him while he was driving. It was like a 1-hour bus trip. She finally got hot enough and asked the bus driver if the bus had air conditioning. And he jokingly said the bus only has air conditioning when the windows are down and the wheels are turning. She then looked back at me and said, "See? I told you the bus had air conditioning," and proceeded to force us to keep the windows up. How does someone that ducking dense become a teacher? Watching a man try to open the locked front door of my shop while a bright red closed sign was literally inches from his face. He kept looking at the door like it was just stuck. There was a girl in my high school who forced the teacher to pause a documentary about people living in mud huts in Africa because she was upset that they were showing us fictional movies in a history class. It took everyone else in the room to convince her that people actually live like that in some places. Wealthy area living for you. How much is a $50 worth? She was the newest teller my boss hired. We'll never forget that moment. I was friends with a guy who believed those fake Apple adverts like Apple Wave. Microwave your phone for instant battery charge. I was so dumbfounded that he actually fell for it. Had someone asked me, is Europe on Earth? When I was younger I was mad that everyone else had an accent and I didn't. 3 years later I realized that I did in fact have an accent and that I was on another level of stupid. Knew a girl in middle school that didn't understand the concept of perspective. She also thought north was whichever direction you were facing at the time. Ah yes. Someone in my history class argued that Mussolini was a type of pasta. A friend didn't have coins for a vending machine but did have $1. She folded up the dollar and forced it into the coin slot and then did not understand why she did not get her item. For me, I had a concussion and was getting x-rays taken. They gave me a lead blanket to wrap around my twig and berries. I took it and wrapped it around me like a cape. I could not understand what they wanted me to do. In your defense, you were concussed. Not me, but a friend worked in a call center for a CC company in the disputes department. The number one item people called to say they never purchased: interest charge. I was helping a colleague with his graduate thesis film. My job was to animate a solar eclipse. Since we couldn't shoot one for real, I animated it using some real-life reference footage to make it look realistic. When I showed him, he asked why the moon was black and had no detail. I asked him if he had ever seen a solar eclipse and he replied yes, of course. But I want this one to look surreal since it's the moon in front of the sun. It's not like a normal solar eclipse. At this point it became clear something was amiss. And after asking a few more clarifying questions, it became clear he had no idea that the large object passing in front of the sun during a solar eclipse is, in fact, the moon. I confronted him about it and he apologized for not being great with astrology. I used to work with a girl who was sweet but so dumb. We were in a meeting once and somehow someone mentioned baked ham. My manager said, "Ugh, I hate ham. It looks like human flesh." The girl I mentioned was sitting next to me and looked horrified and whispered, "Does ham really come from people?" I'd be more worried about the manager that knows what cooked human flesh looks like. A group of late teens sitting outside my building assuring each other that all criminal charges would be dropped when they reached 21. DUIs, drug charges, traffic violations, everything. I walked away shaking my head because they were in for a reality check. Me. When I was a kid, I had a real old transistor radio. Asked my parents for a newer radio, so I could receive and listen to newer music. At the time I was working at a grocery store that had a Coinsta machine. Basically you could place all of your unwrapped change in it and it would be converted for a small fee that you could use for actual cash. I was walking past and noticed a woman struggle with the machine. I stopped to help her. Turns out she had accidentally hit Spanish as a language selection. I quickly explained what she needed to do, figuring she couldn't read Spanish. We were in the US and this is where her struggles came from. So I run through how it works and show her where the receipt will print out that she can turn in at customer service for the cash. She turns and looks at me and says, "But I don't want Spanish money." Sigh. Then I have to explain to her that she would get paid in US dollars. Rescued a coworker on the side of the road with a flat tire, waiting for the tow truck. I pointed out the nail at the top of their tire. We were talking about the Irish potato famine in college. And this one girl said, "Oh wow, I thought it was the potato family." As if that wasn't enough, she later asked why were they so eager to get jobs? If I was that hungry I wouldn't even try to get a job. Man, I wish I was joking. I was once asked how it felt to come to the US as a refugee. "I'm from Germany." She then looked rather surprised when I told her that Hitler has been dead for 75 years and that Germany is one of the more liberal countries in the world these days. She full on thought I fled Nazi Germany. I had to explain to a girl why you couldn't grow your hair down in front of your face and just cut out eye holes. Even explaining it her, she couldn't grasp it and brushed me off as being too smart. I got a concussion a while back. A friend of mine told me not to come close because it might be contagious. They weren't kidding. A girl in my school had gotten about 3 concussions within a year, and when she hit her head the 4th time, and blacked out for a minute, refused to go to the doctor because last time they said if I got another concussion it could cause brain damage. So I'm not going to let them give me another one. Edit. Because so many people saw this and are asking. No, she did not play any sports, she was just incredibly stupid and clumsy even before the first one. I had to explain to a woman that apples did not contain any gluten, wheat, or dairy ingredients. How can one think apples contain dairy? She thought gluten was found in every major grain, and that apples were a grain because they have seeds. Ex-flatmate cancelled the gas and electricity contract because it was too expensive. Wondered why we had no more electricity nor gas. She thought we paid €90 a month to get a hotline 24/7 in case of problem. I worked at a meat desk for a summer job, and a woman came in and asked if we had any meat without spices or sauces. She then proceeded to tell us that the doctor had said that her dogs got sick because she kept feeding them pizza and they couldn't handle the spices. She then said, "Oh, but they love pizza so much. I feel bad for them. I hate people like this who knowingly harm their children and or pets' health." I met a guy who got hit by a train. Not that bad. But a year later he went to show his daughter where and how he got hit by the train and he got hit again. I had a co-worker who could never figure out what time her 15-minute break was over. We were both bank tellers. My friend is allergic to walnuts. One day, he made this sandwich in our college dorm. It had walnuts garnished on top of the bread. I then remember him telling me, "Oh look, there's walnuts on here," and proceeds to eat the entire sandwich. At the time I didn't know he was allergic. I leave to shower, and when I come back there are 2 paramedics in our dorm taking him out on a stretcher. The following day I asked what happened, to which he replies something along the line, "I accidentally ate some walnuts which I'm allergic to, and by the time I went to get a Benadryl, my throat had started to close and I couldn't swallow it, so I had to call 911. I was just utterly shocked how he even let this entire situation happen. I really couldn't believe it. He had known there were walnuts on the bread and still ate it. College days. Am I right? Edit. He knew he was allergic to walnuts, but he's very careless, so it was one of those YOLO moments. In high school I met a boy who asked me for a hygienic cloth because he thought he had a period. An old coworker was telling me that there's people out there that think Alaska is an island. I laughed in disbelief, but another coworker overheard and was flabbergasted. "What? It's not, but it's always drawn off to the side with Hawaii." Point made. Another time a guy with a really thick accent walked in. Same girl was like, "Oh wow, I like your accent, where are you from?" Said guy. Have a guess her response? "Vegas. I've never heard of that place before." And walked away. She is super sweet. Just slightly oblivious. I work retail. Had a customer a few weeks back pull her mask down to cough into the open air and then pull it back up. Really makes you wonder why there are people like this in the world. My wife's cousin and her husband, not baby daddy of her unborn child, fell on self-induced hard times and needed a place to stay for a bit. We set up a queen-sized air mattress in the living room for them. For 3 weeks I woke up to go to work and every morning saw them sleeping on it sideways with their legs hanging off the edge. Then one day she asked me to buy her a bigger air mattress because this one was hard on their backs. I told her to turn her body, the ducking thing even has a built-in pillow on one end. Her response was that then they couldn't see the TV. Then ducking turned the air mattress to face the TV. That's the story of how I became an asshole to the trailer trash side of the family. The bad part is that it's only one of many stories. The husband was a cook at Applebee's. The baby daddy was a cook at Applebee's. And her new husband was another cook from the same ducking Applebee's. All working together. I once forgot to bring my laptop to school, so my mum had to bring it in. My maths teacher was notified and she sent me a message telling me to pick up my laptop at the front office. But the only way I could see the message is if I had my laptop with me. I worked at a pet store in college. This customer asked me which food would make his pit bull swole. I suggested a high-protein food with a good amount of exercise, but advised that a lot of it was determined by the dog's genetics. He asked me if we sold genetics. The time a friend told me how much he hates potatoes while eating French fries, and I literally blew his mind by telling him French fries are potatoes. I once had 2 people come up to me arguing about whether spiders exist. My friend was taking a selfie. The camera was smudged. So we told him he should clean it. He then turns his phone over and began to clean the camera on the back. I once worked in a Midwestern grocery store deli, and I was trying to explain to a woman that the name brand and generic brand of the macaroni salad that we carried were in fact identical. The woman yelled at me saying she could only have the generic brand because one is made with mayo and the other is made with mayonnaise, and I don't like mayo. When I tried to explain that mayo is an abbreviation of mayonnaise, she just said I'm from the South. I know my food and tutted away. When I was in high school, there were these 2 girls that constantly just blew my mind. One of them asked, "What does insignificance mean?" And the other replied, "Why something is significant." The first girl looked at her and went, "Ooh, okay, I get it." So I was talking to one of my online friends about global warming for whatever reason. I said that my mum ran into an old high school friend that didn't even believe that there was trash in the ocean. We live like 10 minutes from the beach, so you can clearly see evidence of trash coming in from the ocean. Anyways, my online friend one-upped me and said they met someone who believed in global warming but they were in support of it. At the beginning of the pandemic, a friend freaked out to hear that there was a COVID case an hour away, meaning someone an hour's drive away had been diagnosed. She thought she should get in her car and drive the other direction to keep ahead of it because she thought COVID, the disease, was approaching like a wave of zombies and was an hour from reaching her. My mom's friend was adopting a baby from China. After the friend returned home with her baby, she was on the phone with my mum. The baby was crying in the background. My mum later told me, the Chinese baby's cry sounded just like a regular baby's. She was legit shocked. I guess she thought they cried differently since they were born in a different country. High school health class sex ed. The teacher mentioned saran wrap can be used as a makeshift barrier for oral sex. A girl asked if tinfoil would work too. Spent 7 years working for TSA. Had a pretty sweet detail where I would assist passengers who did not have it or assist TSA agents if they had questions about the validity of the given ID. I get a call on the radio asking for assistance in verifying an ID. I come over and ask what the issue is. Agent hands me a driver's license and says can't accept this Canadian ID. Hearing this, I assume it's expired or the wrong name. I take a look and see that it is an Alaskan driver's license. I quickly approve the passenger and send them on their way. I then spent 10 minutes explaining that a Canadian DLs are acceptable according to TSA regulations and B. Alaska has never been a Canadian territory. A few years ago my roommate was accepted to NYU and texted me a picture of the letter and said finally get to see a different country. We live in America.